Another day goes by and another NHL franchise off the block for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Countdown of every single squad in the NHL's top 5 fantasy targets. And we're in mini, taking a look at what's going on with Billy G and the Minnesota Wild. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The off-season work for fantasy hockey GMs will never, ever stop. That's why on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we got to take a look at what's going on with the Minnesota Wild, a team with a number of intriguing names and talents to take in. On today's episode, my friends, you know we're showing love to the everydayers, holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. All summer long, temperatures are rising, and over at FanDuel, things are heating up where customers are getting a daily bonus or boost every single day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. My friend, Mr. Roden, this is a team near and dear to your heart. You know, we're Maple Leafs fans on this show, although we try and keep it 100 all the time. No bias here as much as possible. The Minnesota Wild, though, are a team that I think a lot of people out there, regular fans, average fantasy GMs, perhaps don't watch a ton of. And after last season, I wouldn't necessarily blame them. However, we're going to still serve up our top 5. Brock Faber just got the bag and then some. Maybe we start there. Maybe we save that for when we rank this guy because he is definitely in the top 5. He's probably in the top 3. These fantasy angles, we're going to continue to cover, break them down so that everyone out there knows exactly what they're doing come fantasy draft season. Hockey is for everybody. So regardless of the angle you're coming from, brand new to the game, a 10-year vet, we're here for you, and we got the angles that you need. So over to you, Mr. Roden, as always. Top 5, the number 1's locked in. And we could talk about Kaprizov because he is sensational. But after that, this is where I think you can pounce on some of these names, Steele, especially down the list that are still bringing a ton of fantasy value.
First of all, back-to-back episodes of my 2 favorite teams, Maple Leafs and then the Minnesota Wild. This is just a dream come true right now, and I'm so excited to talk about the Minnesota Wild, and you're absolutely right. I don't think a lot of people who watch hockey really focus on Minnesota. Obviously on the East Coast, they're on the West Coast, some late games, but I'm staying up for all of it because I'm tuning in to all those Wild games throughout the regular season and hopefully throughout the playoffs if they can make it this next season. Top 5 fantasy targets. There's a lot to like about this team. A lot of young players. Brock Faber, we're definitely going to touch on. I want to talk about Philip Gustafsson as well as Marc-Andre Fleury, what the situation is in the blue paint with them. But right off the top, like you said, Kirill Kaprizov is the number 1 guy from this team you are targeting. In my opinion, he is a first-round draft pick. Maybe in shorter team leagues where you have 8 team, 10 teams, he falls into the early second. But 14, 16 GMs out there, you're snagging him in the top 16 picks in that first round. So I absolutely love this player. I bought a jersey right away when he was coming into the league. You know, I got to rep the Cappy on the back of that Minnesota Wild jersey, but he's just been so phenomenal throughout the 4 seasons he's been in the National Hockey League. You know, I like the way that they developed his game. You know, they wait until he's 23 years old, I believe. They wait until he's 23 years old for him to come into the NHL. He worked on his game in Russia with in the KHL, and I absolutely love what he's doing right now, leading this team in Minnesota. And we've talked about it being very hard for Minnesota and especially Bill Guerin to entice players to sign long-term. And we're going to touch on that with Brock Faber, when the big contract that he just signed. But Kirill Kaprizov falls to me in that 10 to 14 pick range in the first round, early second round, 96 points last year in 75 games. He's already got 100-plus points in his career so far when he played almost a full season. But you got to love what he does all around. 16.6 shooting percentage, 277 shots. 38 blocks, 55 hits. That's not really part of his game, but he's getting over 21 minutes of average ice time now. The power play is where he really, really shines, in my opinion, as well. But he can do it 5-on-5 hockey. We know he can do it on special teams and on even strength. So Kirill Kaprizov, number one, locked in right there. First round draft pick. You're taking this guy. You're taking this guy in the first round. If you let him slip into the second, I'll take him off your hands. I'll say, nice job. Thank you for giving him to me in that position. But Kirill Kaprizov, love that guy.
3 seasons removed from the Calder Trophy. He has also, Steele, in 3 of his 4 seasons, finished in the top 15 in Hart voting as well. I like to bring up these angles because that just means we're sniffing around the right players. And if you're not exactly buying into the angles that Steele and I are bringing up, read in and buy into the angles of the NHL experts that are voting on the most valuable player in the league. So Kirill Kaprizov, 47 goals 3 seasons ago, 40 goals 2 years ago, and then last season, 46 goals. Am I okay to say this, Steele? At 26 years old, obviously in his prime, entering his prime, I don't even think we've seen the best from Kirill Kaprizov. You can hold me down and tell me whether I'm right or not here. I think he still has another level to his game. I think he's got another gear in the tank, and I think maybe you'll see it this year after they did disappoint last season.
50 goal potential, right, in Kirill Kaprizov.
Very much. Exactly. And I think maybe even more. The problem is, Steele, can the Marco Rossi's, the Matt Boldy's, and some of these players that we've been counting on, and I know Matt Boldy had a great year last year, Marco Rossi, I want to talk about him at the back end of this list, maybe a sleeper. Those are some of the angles that I think have to be covered with this Minnesota Wild team because I have it there in the graphic. Kaprizov needs some help, but who's going to step up and do it? Because if he gets even a little bit more, I'm not taking away from Zook. I'm not taking away from any of the guys that he's played with over the last couple of years. He's formed some chemistry with Ryan Hartman and others. For me personally, I need to see someone step up outside of Kaprizov and really take the reins offensively. And maybe I'm looking even at Matt Boldy. Let's talk about it. Kaprizov locked in at number 1. Let me hit you with this, though, Steele. I got Joel Eriksson at 2, and I juggled with this because I think Matt Boldy could be there. I love Brock Faber. We'll talk about his contract. I got Joel Eriksson at 2 because I was thinking about this, and I know he's been slowly progressing, and that's a really great sign. But you've been selling me on these peripherals, and when a guy's bringing almost 170 hits, 60 penalty minutes, and now he's proving he can bring 30-plus goals, I am really buying into a guy that also, right at 27, 28 years old, still has plenty in the tank. So for me at number 2, it's Joel Eriksson. But let me hit you with this, as I keep alluding to. The Minnesota Wild had the 10th best power play in the league last year, but somehow finished well outside the top 20 in scoring overall. So for me, something has to give there. I don't know what you think that means. I'll turn it right over to you. I think this team underachieved. I think they're better than what the standings said they were last year. And I do expect a better season across the board. And I think a lot of that does have to come from the cage. We'll get there. But hit me with your take on Joel Eriksson and overall what you've been seeing from this Wild team. Because they've been getting it done on the PP, but they can't score overall. That one's bizarre to me.
I don't think it's as bizarre because I think you alluded, you said it yourself. The problem's in the crease. I think they also had a problem last year on the blue line. This is not a very strong blue line when you go into a comparison in their division, in the Western Conference, the NHL overall. They've got some young players. They've got some veterans on the blue line. You'd like to see a little bit more out of Jared Spurgeon. You'd like to see a little bit more out of Jonas Brodin. They got Zach Bogosian in there who brings that physicality on the back end as well. So, you said it yourself. I really do think it was a really bad season in the crease with both Marc-Andre Fleury and Philip Gustafsson. The below 900 save percentage for both of these guys who split the season. Marc-Andre Fleury played 40 games. Yeah. Philip Gustafsson played 42 games. 45 actually, depending on the game start. But 45 games for Gustafsson, 40 for Marc-Andre Fleury, both below a 900 save percentage. Both above a 2.90 goals against average, which even that is, pretty up there in that case. So struggled in the crease, struggled a little bit on the blue line with some of the younger players that they have right now. And we'll talk about some of those younger players, but I'll get to the Joel Eriksson because I think you hit it right on the nail there. He is number 2. It wasn't even a decision for me with Matt Boldy. Joel Eriksson brings all those peripherals that I love. He comes in at number 2, and I'll tell you why once we come back after the break.
Absolutely love that. Like we always do, 30 minutes getting you guys in and out with all of the fantasy info that you need. When it comes back to news popping, we'll cover that too. Right now it's a little quiet, so we're going team for team, division by division, making sure you have every single angle covered. Today's episode, my friends, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The summer's heating up, and this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus every single day. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Lots of July left, Steele, if you look at it with a positive lens. But there's August as well. Lots of time to make bets at FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com and make those bets. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Also, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today's YouTube channel, doing tremendous things over there, featuring all the Locked On Sports podcasts. You can also find them on the free Amazon Fire TV channel. Hit the subscribe button. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll get these words out eventually. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And going back to Joel Eriksson, I know you said you were juggling between Matt Boldy, you were juggling between Joel Eriksson here, but for me, it was Eriksson the entire way at number 2. I think this is one of the better players that gets overlooked every single season in the NHL. I forget who we talked about alongside Joel Eriksson last year about what he brings to the table. He fills out all the categories. He fills out all the peripherals. We talked about Eriksson and somebody else a lot last season. I'm blanking on the name, but
me
for
too.
me, Eriksson
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, it'll come to me somewhere in this episode. But Eriksson is one of those players who gets overlooked so much, and it shows when we come to draft him in the fantasy leagues right now. His average draft position last year was 7.5 in the round 7.5. So he was getting drafted 77th, 78th overall is what it has it at right now. He finished 35th in fantasy ranking at the end of the regular season last year because of what he does with those peripheral categories. And I know you like this a lot. He's been in the consideration for the Selke Trophy 4 years in a row now. It's kind of, the voting has gone down a little bit. He went from, he finished 4th in Selke voting, down to 6, down to 8, down to 10 this past season. But regardless, he does it on both ends of the ice. I love that about this player. 64 points, and like you said, has 30 goal potential in his realm right now. And he's in his prime. He is in his prime right now. He's 27 years old going into next season. 64 points in 77 games. He's been very healthy over the last 4 seasons. On an average, he misses 4 games on a regular basis in the season, which again, that's really nothing to this player and to, your fantasy team if he misses 4 games a year, because he does so much great things out there. 169 hits, 55 blocks, 267 shots, 11.2 shooting percentage. And this is a guy, again, who can get it done on the power play. 12 power play goals last year, 9 power play assists. You said it yourself. They were 10th in power play ranking, just below 23% on special teams. I absolutely adore this player. I always try to draft him. And, I always try to let him fall a little bit farther. I think this is a player you can easily draft in the 4th round. I expect him to continue to drop down the standings or down the draft board. I think he's going to be overlooked once again. He's going to get taken somewhere in the 7th to 8th round, maybe the 6th round. But I would be very happy taking this player in the late 4th.
When I was thinking about this player, Steele, I was trying to put together a little list of guys who are offensively gifted, who also bring peripherals. And I'm not trying to put Joel Eriksson in the same conversation as the Tkachuks, but they bring that kind of peripheral value along with elite offensive upside. Again, the Tkachuks on a different level. Those are the two, I would say, in terms of fantasy, Brady, Matt, all around, you can make the argument that those are the 2 forwards anyway that fill out the categories. Joel Eriksson, he's a poor man's Brady Tkachuk. He is still sensational. He's really coming into his own here, Steele. If you can get together even a couple of these guys on your squad, you're going to be really hard to
Money.
beat week to week. So let's double circle this one. Let's double circle this entire strategy, which isn't exactly reinventing the wheel, but it makes sense, Steele. And you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have struggled so much with putting him at 2 because I really do think he deserves to be there. But I think Matt Boldy is a lock at number 3. You know, I could argue and you could put him at 4. Me personally, what I saw him last year, he's a great all-around forward. He can skate, but his skill and his vision, his ability to create, he's just coming into his own. 69 points last year, a big lad at 6'2", a 12th overall draft pick that, look, I understand the expectations were there immediately after 63 points in 81 games the year before. I'm still very happy with 69 in 75 games. Hit me with your take on this. 32 block shots, 33 hits, not really his game. However, 227 shots. Let's see him shoot a little bit more and see what happens. I really like this player, Steele. I don't think that's a bold take. Oh, man, I told myself I wasn't going to do it. I did it anyway. Matt Boldy at number 3. I'm loving this guy, and they're going to need a big year out of Boldy, Rossi, and Faber if they want to be in the playoffs. The young guys have got to step up.
Look, I know it's always easy to say you want this kid to shoot more, but back-to-back seasons of over 225 shots, you got to love it. Obviously, if he gets more, you love it either way, but three straight seasons of over 12.2% in shooting percentage, 31 goal season the year prior, 29 this past season. If he played those 7 extra games, he gets to 30 goals once again. He gets to 70 points in this position. And this is a player who has 75 plus point potential right now that he's getting into his own. He's playing with the likes of Joel Eriksson. He's playing with the likes of Kaprizov. He's playing with the likes of Matt Zuccarello, who is still a very great playmaker in this league right now at 37, 38 years old. So I like the top 6 forward group. I think what Minnesota has done in the bottom 6 group as well, they get a little bit more physical. They get a little bit more gritty. They still have Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno. They bring in Jakub Trenin and Jacob Lauko, Frederick Gaudreau's down there as well. But it's really the bread and butter in the top 6 group right now. Matt Boldy comes in at number 3 as well for me. Matt Boldy, he also falls somewhere at where Joel Eriksson has been falling in the draft position the last couple of seasons. I think somewhere in the 7th, 8th round, you can maybe wait till the 9th. I wouldn't wait much longer than that. But I would say somewhere in that early 7th round is exactly where I'm putting Matt Boldy at in this position. Because again, this is still a very tough team, based on what we saw last year, finishing 11 points out of the playoffs, struggled to score goals at time, very weak in the defensive zone, struggled in the crease as well, but the power play was sweet. I think you and I both really like Matt Boldy as a player. There's still so much room for him to grow in this top 6 forward group in Minnesota, and he's going to continue to do so. That's why he comes in at number 3. I think, maybe a year or 2 from now, he can be bumped up to that number 2 position ahead of Joel Eriksson. But I love the peripherals, man. I love the peripherals and what Eriksson brings.
I totally respect that too, Steele. And hey, we can come out here and talk about it, but the caveat has to be put out there that it just depends on the format of your league. So Steele and I always want to try and cover as many angles as we can, regardless of the format. But depending on that, we'll shift around sometimes, most of the time, actually, where you're taking these guys. So that just has to be pointed out. What also I think I'd like to point out, Steele, looking at the Minnesota shot against numbers, they actually weren't too bad, as in I really do think it was the goaltending that let them down. This is me speaking as someone who probably watched very little Minnesota Wild hockey live last year, but I know what I'm talking about. And 29 shots or under in today's NHL, I think your defense and your forward group did a pretty good job of allowing your goaltender to get it done in the blue paint. And Philip Gustafsson heading into last season, Steele, considering how good he was the year before, I know I was really high on this player in terms of his fantasy value. Let's talk about the goaltending. Let's talk about Brock Faber, Rossi, Zook, Gus, and anything else you'd like to discuss, my friends, because we're going to get it in, and we're going to get it in all summer long on the Fantasy Hockey Podcast that you need.
Every single day. Moving forward, you can tune into our episodes of, we still got half the league, less than half the league to cover, but we'll get to it all through the month of August, and lots more to talk about on this Minnesota Wild team coming up right next. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. I'm going to continue to show support to this Minnesota Wild team moving forward every single season because I absolutely love the team. I love Kaprizov. You know I love Eriksson, and I love as well Philip Gustafsson, and that's who comes in at number 4 for me in this position. Off the targets of who you can take from the Minnesota Wild right now.
Okay.
And I obviously terrible season last year from the year prior, but when you look at the numbers, I think when you go back to when he was traded to Minnesota, he played 37 games. He was 22-9. He had a record of 22-9-7, 3 shutouts. He had a 210 goals against average with a 931 save percentage, and then completely just falls off. Still, he had a record of 20-18-4, 3 shutouts again, but an 899 save percentage and a 3.06 goals against average. He overachieved in the first season with Minnesota, and he underachieved in this last season with the Wild. I think he falls somewhere exactly in the middle of those two categories with the save percentage and goals against average. I think we see a huge bounce back with Philip Gustafsson next season. Of course, you got Marc-Andre Fleury backing you up, but I'm still going with Gustafsson as the number 1 guy going into the season. He's younger right now. He's 25 years old. You still have a lot of faith in Marc-Andre Fleury and his capabilities to come in and take and dominate and take get a win when you need one. But I'm still going to rock with Gustafsson going into next season. He comes in at number 4 for me. I believe we can see his career average get back, or this next season, him get to a 915, 914 save percentage, a 2.60 goals against average, somewhere in the middle of those last 2 years, because I really do think he is going to be a great goaltender in this league.
It's seeming like that's going to be the case, Steele. And this is kind of interesting because usually I have a goalie at 4 and you have him at 5. A little bit different for me because I guess I'm just wary and I'm looking at Brock Faber, and maybe it's because I've been doing a lot of digging into D-men. I'm just going to first and foremost agree with you wholeheartedly on Gustafsson's angles, and this might be that perfect angle that you and I have brought up before because the guy was a little bit dodgy last year, definitely in terms of numbers and the team's success, that you might be able to snag Gustafsson at a really sneaky good round because obviously he has what it takes to be a number 1 goaltender at the NHL level. He's just got to string it together for another season, which I think he will do. However, I'm more comfortable with taking Brock Faber at 4. Talk to me about what you think about this. Talk to me about the contract because that's a lot of money for a 21-year-old. Hold on. Is he 22 now? For a 21-year-old kid, birthday coming up in August. Shout out to the August babies. 26 penalty minutes, 47 points, 150 block shots, 65 hit steal, and 136 shots on net. I don't think you're going to disagree with me on so much to like about a young defenseman just coming into his game. So I'm going to take him off the board ahead of Gus, but they might be interchangeable. And actually, as I spit out that word interchangeable, in my opinion, they are. I would take them in very similar situations in terms of rounds. However, I'm liking the upside with Faber. Now he's got that bag secured. What does that mean for him? A little bit of a boost in the offense. To me, though, Steele, and again, I'm throwing a lot at you here. The bottom 6 is where I'm looking at the hardest, and I think they're going to need to get a lot better seasons out of, I'm not saying to pen it all on Frederick Gaudreau, Marcus Johansson, or Marcus Foligno, but the bottom 6 has to be better to prop up guys like Faber and Gustafsson, so to bring the point full circle. I got Faber at 4, Gustafsson at 5, but they're going to need that bottom 6 to do something, or else this team might be out hung to dry once again.
Look, hold on to your cap here because I'm going in a different direction, and I'm going with a more valuable player in my opinion. I'm going with Matt Zuccarello at the number 5 position off the fantasy targets. Matt Zuccarello comes in at number 5. He's going to get drafted, in my opinion, above Brock Faber. I think it's going to be close coming into the fantasy draft. I think based off what we saw from Brock Faber, we can talk about the contract a little bit more at the end of the episode. But Brock Faber played really well in his first full season at 82 games, 45 points. The blocks were over 150. You would like to see a little bit more shots, and I think that comes with him being the quarterbacking defenseman on the power play. I still like what Matt Zuccarello brings to the team right now at 36, 37 years old. He also missed 12 games 13 games last year. He had 63 points in 69 games because I believe he had a hand injury. And this was one of the, over the last 2 seasons with Minnesota, this was one of his worst outings in the shooting percentage throughout his entire career. A 6.9 shooting percentage from Matt Zuccarello. Went from back-to-back seasons of over 20 goals to a 12-goal season, but also a 51 assist season in the making as well. I believe we're going to see a lot better shooting shot opportunities as well as shooting danger shots from Matt Zuccarello. I still think he's going to be such a great playmaker for Matt Boldy, Kirill Kaprizov. Again, he's going to be on that top power play unit. And if he can play the full 82 games this next season, I think he gets back up to a 70-plus point season with the Minnesota Wild. He is the playmaker of this team. I think I said this before, but he can literally pass the puck behind, he has eyes in the back of his head. He could pass the puck through a skate blade if he wanted to.
From the parking lot into the
parking lot, off the banners, off the Jumbotron, onto Kirill Kaprizov's tape, and he wires it in the back of the net. You also got to take into account this guy had 28 power play assists last year. He really does know how to find his teammates and give them those opportunities for the best scoring chances. I see more value with Matt Zuccarello because I've seen it over the last 3 seasons in Minnesota. One season with Brock Faber doesn't do it for me to put him ahead of Zuccarello, but it could be close based off of the rookie season from the young defenseman.
I like this, though, Steele. You're sticking to your guns. You're sticking to a guy that, you mentioned it, has also formed some pretty serious chemistry with our boy Kirill the Bill, Dollar Bill, the Thrill, however you want to say it. He's definitely formed some chemistry with Kaprizov. So those are some of those angles that you might want to read into. Looking at that top power play unit, though, Steele, I don't think we should be surprised that they were top 10 or sitting in 10th. Nice balance of a little bit of physicality, some speed, lethal shot, Brock Faber quarterbacking, a lot of offensive angles to like here. I'm bringing up that term, much like you've been using Savant. I'm breaking down angles, pal. We got to see the puck drop on this NHL season. There's only so much you and I can sit here and speculate about. And this team, for me, when I was thinking about this upcoming season and where to place them, I definitely think they underachieved last year. I could see them as a bubble playoff team, wild card spot in the West for sure. Who knows, though, until we drop the puck on this bad boy, Steele. You and I are just going to have to keep grasping at straws as much as possible. However, we brought up the top 5. I had Gustafsson at 5, Faber at 4, but I also had right there Zook. I had a sneaky pick in Rossi. Let's drop the puck. Let's see what happens. I trust in Billy G, though. You know I do. He has a good eye for players. He's been doing it the right way, not giving in, not selling out. He's sticking to his plan, and I think sooner than later, this Minnesota team will knock on the door. I just don't know if it's this season or even next, but that's just me.
Look, we talk a lot about the Atlantic Division being one of the toughest divisions, and take away the Arizona Coyotes and the Chicago Blackhawks. This is also a very.
Do you mean the Utah Yeti?
Yeah, sorry, the Utah Yeti. My bad, but this is also a very tough decision, right? Division right here. You got the Dallas Stars, who are on the verge of making the Stanley Cup Finals. The Winnipeg Jets have one of the best goaltender fantasy-wise in Connor Hellebuck. Colorado Avalanche, of course, they're getting it done. Nashville Predators are a dangerous team coming into the next year. And we all, I think, for me for the most part, but I think we all could say that we were surprised at the outcome of the St. Louis Blues at how well they did last season as well. So this is going to be a very tough division for the Minnesota Wild to make the playoffs, be a top 3 team, or even make a wild card spot right now. So lots to like about this Wild team, but it's going to be an uphill battle for this Minnesota team going forward in this next season. But like you said, we got to wait for the puck to drop. Can't wait to see the game 1 of the Minnesota Wild this upcoming season. We're fired up here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We hope you're fired up as well listening to this episode. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen. Again, go check out Locked On Sports Day's YouTube channel. You can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Have a great day out there. Good luck with all your summer bets, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.